Cosmic here, welcome back to the channel, and today we get to talk about the top 16 list from Egman's event last night that had 124 players on a random Tuesday. So yes, we got to increase the cap for this one because 64 slots just went far too fast, and people are clearly excited to play, which is really awesome to see. And the other big takeaway is not only just the meta looking pretty good and overall diverse for only having 2 sets, but going into this tournament, a lot of us thought that Renji Rush would be the big story and kind of taking it by storm again, but honestly, it kind of fell off compared to some of the other lists that we've seen. Now, Kurapika taking the top cut of the pie is not all that surprising. We know that this is a well-performing deck, but I do gotta give a shout out here to Blue Bomber and a pure Blue Bomber, not a blue hybrid, making top 16 as well. So overall, a very diverse and fun top 16. Of course, we're just going to go into each archetype here to highlight them and talk about them at a high level. But if you want to see the full list from the event, make sure to go check out Egman Event's website to get the full top 16 breakdown. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the lists themselves. So, of course, our champion going 7-0 is Tyler Green with the Toshiro Rush list. So we are interestingly seeing this massive shift towards aggro, be it the Toshiro variant being the purple Renji Rush, right? Where for this deck in particular, we see 16 zeros that are getting played and then 6 more 1 cost. So as we got to see throughout the tournament, and again, all of the matches are live on Eggman's YouTube channel, it got to a point where it just played a bunch of 0s and 1s to the board, got enough chip damage in, and then relied on Toshiro to remove a blocker and get you in those last couple points of damage. And then, of course, it was so spectacular to see happen live, and yes, they probably could have played around the preserving extra life if they really wanted to, but on the final turn that they needed, Tyler was able to find the Shinji off the top to get the impact to Toshiro to take the final life. And it was a truly electrified moment to see happen live, and just not normally do we see a game come down to exactly having 2 energy and having the exact draws like that. So it was just a spectacular finish to the tournament. However, as we see more decks, because as we've seen with the Renji Rush, that caused a lot of people to, build that deck as well. Because, hey, again, it was like $20 to finish the deck sort of thing. I'm sure we'll see other people kind of experiment with this lower to the ground, a bunch more 0s, a bunch more 1s play style. However, that does mean things like, I believe it's the Orihime, that's the 3500 double blocker, or just double blocker 3 energy cards in general, are suddenly getting a lot more value, right? Of course, if they have the special trigger, if they have the Toshiro, yes, they have it, but having these double blockers early can help save a lot of life that you might not otherwise have if you're just doing like the 3K blockers or trying to be a little bit slower with like the Kurapika deck. So huge shout out to Tyler, definitely one that I'm expecting that we'll see a bit more of in the future. I know a lot of people really love Green Bleach. I get a lot of comments about this, and the other thing I will say that we kind of talked about on the stream yesterday is that Green Bleach has a bunch of different ways you can build it. Now we've seen like the all-in aggro variant. We've seen more like the traditional, mid-range Toshiro and Unohana. And then we also have the very late top end with the Yamato and Unohana getting you up to the 7 and 8 energy requirements that you want to see, getting a bunch of double energy creators, right? And just being able to rush your energy line forward and get a bunch of swings in. So really do love the deck diversity that we get to see out of Green Bleach. And I hope we get to see more of it when we get Volume 2. Again, as I talked about in my last video, got confirmed for May, which is really exciting. Going from there, we do have a Kurapika list, and again, this was the most represented archetype in the top cut for top 16, and overall, it wasn't the most played deck in the format, but it did have a really good conversion here towards the top. And what's really interesting between this list and also the other one that we're going to cover is that now we are seeing a lot more of the Melody card getting played, which counts as a energy for your front line. So if you caught my last video, I did retweet and also talk about a list that went 6-1 in the Major Japan tournament a year and a half after Hunter x Hunter's release. So it's really cool to see a Kurapika kind of getting second life in Japan, and the Melody also being an active trigger is really nice to try to help stabilize that early game bleed, where maybe you have a Bastro in the front that gets an active trigger, gets you a block, and then can bounce back to your energy line is really important sequencing for this style of deck. Otherwise, we do still see like the Setos to give you the temporary double energy. We do have the Hisoka, which you want to hit off the Neon, and otherwise a pretty traditional take of what we've seen so far. The other note here is that it does play 2 of the 3-2 Leorio to get a card back from your sideline, which we haven't really seen in a lot of lists yet, but it does have a active trigger as well, which again, if you've been playing Union Arena for a little while now, the active triggers are definitely extremely important, I would say, in all decks, but also for the more mid-game to late-game control decks, you just need a little bit extra time to stabilize. Getting an active trigger can be really important. So, again, really huge shout out to see all the Kurapika getting played in such diversity that we've had. Again, top 4 was 4 different decks, all things considered, which is really cool to see. And this gives me a lot of hope looking into the regionals that we have at the Orlando Bandai Card Fest. I really can't wait to see how things shake up, because we're also going to have JJK and Code Geass joining us. So I think it's going to be a really fun event to play in. Moving on from there, we have Joe Mendoze with the, the creator of Purple Renji Rush, which, again, still did very good. Made it to the finals undefeated, lost in the final round, dropped back down to 3rd, but it is still a very aggressive deck that you have to prepare for, and they played beautifully the entire tournament. I think they were on camera 3 times, if I remember correctly. Not much more to say about this deck in general. It is just I want to play these 4K vanillas to the board. We don't care about rating. We just want to attack with 4Ks. And as we actually saw in the tournament, going against things like Yellow Bleach, having to play your 4K bodies just rested for the turn, if they're able to punish you with the raid targets and get to apply that damage right back immediately and give you kind of like a +2 damage swing, that can be pretty difficult to come back from. But John had some great timing with the removals or color triggers. The 1-drop Ichigo we saw all night was just a real MVP for the color triggers that they were hitting. It was insane to see how consistently they were hitting the color triggers and just getting a massive, massive value from it, right? As Egman and I kind of talked during the stream, purple color trigger is definitely by far and away the best color trigger, because in purple you just have so many things that you either want to pitch early or get back from your sideline anyways for extra value, and it's going to save you a life, where I guess we don't have it yet, but red, for example, feels like the worst color trigger because it is a 2500 removal effect. And while 2500 doesn't line up with pretty much anything in the format unless you hit it like the first 2 turns of the game, which then in case, hey, it's an extra removal, which is good, but they definitely had to balance it with being at a 2500 instead of a 3K. So again, huge shout out to John here, continuing to carry on Renji Rush, but ultimately the only one that we've seen. There was a other Ichigo deck that was more of the traditional raid variant, where we do actually see the Rukia raid and the Renji raid. I guess you can still technically raid Renji in this list, which did happen in the tournament, to be fair, but generally, again, the plan or the strategy is to play the 4K bodies, get aggressive early on, and then save like your 5 Ichigos or your special trigger to remove some of the last cards. Going on from there, we have Kris with a Gone and Friends. And this one I did want to give a special shout out. It's only like 8 or 9 cards different from the Kurapika list, but as we've covered in the last video, again, from the Japan list that did well, and then also just in some other places we've talked about it, but I very strongly feel like this Gone needs to be played more, especially with our last versus video that we did, and just getting more impact bodies on the board is extremely, extremely important. And then also, it's important to remember that this when played trigger is also very good on defense, especially if we're seeing a line where a lot of people are playing these 4K, 4K versus 4K walls. If you hit a Golem out of life and just make your entire board 5K, you just turn off their entire turn. So I would expect to see more of these Golem style of decks with this starter deck variant. So if you haven't picked up the starter decks, obviously go to your local game store. They're very cheap to pick up. You want 4 of these. You only need to buy 2 technically, unless you're like me and care about them all being foiled. Then you need to buy 4 foil starter decks, or 4 starter decks. I'm so glad they changed that later. But long story short, I do think this Gone is going to see a bit more play in the near future once more people have time to test and build with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Kurapika, pure Kurapika builds start to fall off a little bit in favor of the Gone. It's a little bit faster. You still have the impact. The defensive trigger is very good. And also, to be stated, right, Kurapika is also very good as a defensive raid. But if you've been playing this deck, and yes, we do have the Melody, getting to 7 energy in this current environment is pretty rough. So I definitely would encourage others, again, yes, if you love the more late game quad impact, as I showcased in the last versus video, this can have some insane end game boards where you have like double Gone, Kurapika 5 and Kurapika 7 that says, okay, I do not care what your last cards are. Here is 4 times impact. I am winning this turn, sort of thing. So you have these like ultimate boards that are going to win. So Again, can't stress enough. Obviously, we're playing things like the Bastro to give us the double energy to the back. We have the Neon, which is still just, Neon gaming and gambling, which I like to call it. But ultimately, still a deck that is going to fall more into like the mid-range or late game category, where you have to spend several turns just building up your energy line and then trying to close out the game with a bunch of 4K attackers. Or if you get to the Kurapika, the 7 energy 5K body. Now, moving into our 5-2s, I got to give a huge shout out to Jamie with the pure blue bomber build, and we did get to see throughout the tournament just how insanely strong Bara can be at giving you that BP reduction, not only to line up into Genthru, but just making some of your other attackers live in that case. So for those that really love the more top-of-deck manipulation and a little bit of gambling sometimes, as it were, because sometimes you do have to play the Genthru blind and just hope for the best. But it is one that definitely rewards you for getting the reps in with it and making sure that you understand the lines that this deck has to take, especially if your opponent isn't aware of which blue version deck that you're playing, which is, again, another reason why I like the hybrid variant. A well-timed Genthru that can blow up like a double energy 3K that they push to the front line is going to be a massive tempo swing in your favor to deny their energy as well as getting in an extra point of damage. So this is probably overall my favorite deck to play in this kind of month one or first set of releases, right? First 7 weeks, I guess, of Union Arena format. I do personally like the blue hybrid variant to put in the Killua so that you get the extra raid and kind of surprise attacks, as it were. But again, blue and purple in general just being so great at getting the extra filtering, getting the extra draw, that in a best of one game, sometimes that is the most important thing, just consistency being king, and nobody does it like blue and purple decks in Union Arena. So if you love a more early game aggressive tempo deck that can pull off some extremely big brain plays, then definitely check out the blue bomber build or check out some of the hybrid variants I've posted elsewhere on the channel. And then last but not least, we do also have a yellow Bleach variant. Going into, I think it was round 4, there was 4 different yellow Bleach decks that were 3-0. Had a very good start of the tournament. And then ultimately, it was Josh here going 5-2, showing us the triple raid variant, where we have the Asnot, the Jugram, and the Yuba. Being the 6th top end. And this is a card that we've seen do quite a bit of work in the tournament. The strip effect is strong. The 3K nuke is strong. And again, against those more aggressive strategies, getting to get a 3K removal while also attacking can be a huge swing in your favor. However, we also did see that 6 energy is pretty expensive at times, and yellow doesn't have that draw in cycling like blue and purple, so it does feel a little bit weaker overall for that nature. But if you want a more, controlling style of deck, we do have the 3-drop color or 3 energy color trigger. Lets us, check the top card of our opponent's deck. We got to see just how soul crushing that effect can be on our opponents in the tournament. And then, of course, we just have so many ways with impact to close out games. And then also a shout out to Basby. This is one that performed very, very well in the tournament, threatening the double damage, getting the cycle where you need it. It does cost 5 energy, and it doesn't have a raid, which can be a little bit painful to set up at times, but we got to see that when you get that double damage early, and then you're saying every turn, hey, I'm threatening damage too, you have to lose a card to this, it can apply a good amount of pressure to help you close out the game. And then, of course, Asnot giving you that board control to rest one of their key units that they maybe want to sacrifice and forcing them to have to block with a higher value unit. It is a very dangerous combo that we've seen time and time again out of yellow. So again, huge shout out to Josh bringing yellow Bleach into the spotlight. And again, looking at the overall breakdown here, we do see, again, a good distribution here within top 16. Also, shout out to the meta looking pretty diverse, given that we only have the 2 titles. And again, 124 players, absolutely amazing to see randomly on a Tuesday night of all things. Like, again, I can't say enough. I am just blown away at the reception that Union Arena has had so far. I, of course, am a big fan. It's cheap to get into. It's a fun side game. I love the flavor that they bring to these characters. But to see 124 players when we only have 2 titles, and I know, at least based on YouTube comments, everywhere I read, it feels like everybody is waiting for JJK at this point. Maybe some people picked up some decks for just to have them now sort of thing, but I continue to be just blown away about the number of people that keep saying, I can't wait for JJK. I'm going to start playing with JJK. So I do think we are going to see some explosive growth from this game, looking at JJK into Code Geass that The regionals are going to be super fun in Orlando, and I cannot wait to see everybody. Then also what does well. So yeah, still fingers crossed that JJK gets some type of choice restrictions. We do know that Code Geass is getting hit based on what was confirmed on the Dallas stream. But overall, again, very happy to see a quite diverse top 16. And a lot of people just feeling like they're bringing their favorite decks and being rewarded for it, right? Being rewarded for the decks they have the most reps with. Again, Kurapika here taking the spotlight over maybe Renji Rush that we've seen last time, but overall still a very good breakdown. So with that, my friends, hope you enjoyed a quick review. Again, go check out Egman Events website to see the full top 16. But otherwise, what surprised you from these lists? Kind of any big key takeaways that you're excited for, or did your favorite list make it into the top cut? Definitely let me know in the comments below. But until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.